Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Brandon Tancott with us today. He's a founder and entrepreneur in Pretoria, South Africa. He's the founder and CEO of an agency called Web Street. They're full service and they do mostly beautiful websites with Webflow. So, going to talk about that and doing business in Africa. This pod is presented to you by podfire.com. If you want to start and scale your own podcast, go to podfire.com. Brandon, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Awesome. Thanks, Charles. Great to have be back here, and thanks for inviting me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be have an opportunity to chat to your audience. Lately, I've been working a lot in marketing, predominantly in no code, and trying to find how we can develop a lot of African talent into the no code space. Working with European agencies, American agencies, but also local talent at all different levels. So from grassroots, intermediate, and professional, and how we can use no-code tools to kind of shape and build new systems, new website. You mentioned Webflow, so that's obviously very high up in our stack of tools, but it has evolved into other tools as well as we look at how do we sort of grow the no-code ecosphere here in Africa. So a lot of my work is focused around building websites, but also around marketing, skills development, training, and trying to make a positive impact and see how we can lead people in a new sort of way of doing business.
Generally, who do you target as clients and how do you get in touch with them?
A lot of the time, our clients reach out to us because of the type of work that we do, but that has shifted, I think, dramatically since no code has come about. I think it gives us a new opportunity to put a razor flag and say this is something we can do, where in the past you may have had those objections when it comes to resources. A lot of the time, especially here in Africa, people will come up with ideas, concepts for startups. They may have access to certain vehicles that they want to get those projects going with, but then they run up against the wall in terms of getting funding, or they run up against the wall in terms of finding the developers. So now how do we bridge that gap? So since 2019, 2020, and obviously with, the shake-up in the world, no code came to the fore, and it created a huge opportunity for people within Africa to firstly get access to international resource. And by that, I mean direct knowledge and direct contact with no code experts, plugging into no code communities and being able to learn directly from people overseas as if they were sitting next to you in your own lounge, but also being able to then transfer those skills into international agencies. So I think Africa got an opportunity to stand up and show what it's capable of, big in part because of the no code tools. Because there was a big gap before in Africa. I think there's only about 700,000 developers. If you look at a market like the US, for example, there's about 4.4 million developers serving about 30 million people. So, that's the opportunity within Africa. So we saw that opportunity, and we started to shift our focus into marketing no code as an opportunity for people to build their startup, get not just a website built, but also potentially a venture, an innovation, a project. And that's kind of how we started to market ourselves. A lot of the time in community-based marketing, so speaking in communities or even on webinars, podcasts, getting the word out there and making people aware of the opportunity that lies within no code. That's kind of how we've been getting up a lot of our leads.
Right. So, okay. Yeah, no code is there. I think it scales a bit more because I do believe that most companies are going to be one person companies in the future with a bunch of AIs working for them. And it means that people will be responsible for maintaining their own websites with AIs instead of developers that tend to not scale. Now, with Webflow, can you also build apps? Can you build like a full product in Webflow, or is it just like website front end?
I think you would predominantly use it for the website front end, but there are people that are scaling into building full-on apps off of the back of Webflow, with systems that FinSuite have brought out a suite of applications that allows you to build and take it further with a bunch of plugins, etc. So I think Webflow right now is more of a front end builder, but they have released developer tools, logic, database architecture. So I think it's going to very quickly become a full suite contender in terms of operationally for an entrepreneur or a business owner to come in and build. At this stage, that would be a little bit more at the professional level. But like I said, if you look at what it would take you to build those solutions, products on other platforms, using platforms like Bubble alongside with Webflow, that's how you would go about creating those environments or products.
Right. How many clients do you have right now? How much do you charge typically?
We've got about 40 clients at the moment, and the projects, range in size from about $2,000 to about $10,000. I'm just saying dollar prices so that we can keep it quite generic and global. But obviously, we do have preferred rates for South African and African-based clients, which, the rates are a little bit different here locally. And obviously, we also work with international agencies. So we are a lot agency to agency. So sometimes that rate may change on the negotiating table based on whatever the project is, what type of resources we need to bring to the table. That rate can change. So it is variable. We kind of scope it out like most people ahead of time. But then we do like to get in a fixed retainer rate. So if we can get a client in a fixed retainer of between $500 to $1,000, keep the communication open, keep some advice, and some channels, so that whatever their investment is, they actually may manage to recoup some of that.
Is your plan to grow this year to 80 clients? And if so, how would you do that?
Yeah, I think a big part of this year is stabilizing our growth strategy. So maybe not reaching the growth points of 80 straight away, but coming up with ways that we're marketing more to the correct type of clients and bringing in the correct type of clientele. I think a lot of the time, because we went out full bravado on no code, you do attract sometimes, projects that aren't an exact fit to our agency or, what we're capable of delivering an excellent job on. And if we aren't, capable of delivering an excellent job on something, then we normally, would rather turn away from that type of work. So it is, more about how do we get more targeted and make sure that we attracting the right type of clients to our agency. I think that's going to be a big focus for this year. A lot of that has got to do with, experimentations with the type of content we're putting out, but also the network and the types of people that we engage with, which is a little bit more organic and offline. But a lot of the agency business that we do is also offline. Yeah.
And how can South Africa compete with countries like India that seem to offer cheap wage? They don't have the power outage problem, the economic problem, the corruption problems that South Africa is facing. So, how do you plan in competing on that level?
I think it is a challenge. A lot of India's ICT market is very, very well established, and a lot of American, European companies have outsourced. It would be a lot the same in the same way like Belarus and or Russian developers broke into that market early on. They made themselves available. They put in the hours. It's not glorious, and it's not. But that's what it takes, is to show reliability and trust to the market, and then also to create enterprises of collaboration. I think the African market is still a little bit dispersed in terms of localized bigger agencies that provide this international outsourced model, where in India it's been a lot more developed. So I think a big goal for African communities that want to take developing Africa as a destination for outsource seriously would be to start collaborating a little bit more internally and to make sure that they're competing on a skill set that we know India is. In terms of rates and prices, I think we're quite competitive. South Africa, in terms of skills and the labor capacity we have here in Africa, it's definitely high. Training is something that also needs to be developed in order for us to be able to compete a little bit more effectively with India. India's training capacity is a lot higher and a lot more developed. So getting a lot more grassroots development and training in is definitely going to make a big difference. So I think a lot of that is happening at the moment. If we look at now from 2021 to 2023, the investment in Africa, we had a spike in 2022, about 6.3 billion investment. That's come down to about 3.1 now in 2023, 2024. We'll see where we end up. But it shows an international confidence in Africa. So definitely an emerging place for development.
On the startup side in South Africa, what are you seeing?
A lot of business to business innovation. So how do people leverage no code and creating platforms of collaboration within business to business? So it's not the same as in European markets or American markets where a lot of the businesses are very formalized and the sectors are very formalized, and there's a lot of governance and regulation in different sectors of how the supply chain works. In Africa, that can be a little bit broken. So I'm seeing a lot of apps and development that's coming in to plug the holes within those supply chains. A lot of apps that are coming in to plug holes within payment gateways. Transmittance of money between different places is a big thing in Africa, of course. And also administration to create pockets of knowledge sharing that enable administration. So whether that be accounting or legal or anything to do with laws, local or local bylaws, anything like that. There's a huge emphasis on startups developing those type of things, as well as transportation, healthcare, food security and energy security. Energy security obviously is a huge thing in South Africa, particularly at this stage. With load shedding, people are investing into, power to purchase plans, and then off those power to purchase plans, creating systems that can run metering systems, for example, and backup solar systems, and all those are developed within no-code apps and systems that need to be marketed. And some of them are local. So, which is a good thing. I think Paystack was a big feather in Africa's hat recently, selling to Stripe. That's a African payment gateway, started in Africa, that sold to the biggest payment gateway in the world. So I think that again proves a little bit more the market confidence in Africa.
What are your top goals for this year? Where do you want to focus your energy on?
I think it would be, like I said, in aligning our service offering and our clients and getting a little bit closer to where we want to be in terms of an agency strategically. So that's a lot more internal work than external work. However, we're also playing with the same tools that we're working with for our clients. And in that, we're seeing a lot of opportunities to disrupt our own market and also to create new innovations that will be useful to agencies who deal with similar clients to us. So it would be almost packaging our skill set and our knowledge base and then being able to pass that on. I'm also getting a little bit gray in the years. So I'm starting to get to that age where I'm starting to look at legacy and what is the next step in terms of training and passing down the information and the knowledge to the next level of mentor that may come through. So that's a big part of the goals this year, is on internal development within the agency, and I think a lot of personal development for myself in reaching that next legacy step.
Right. And where can people find out more about you online?
You can check me out on Twitter or x.com/Tancott. LinkedIn, if you want to check me out on LinkedIn, Brandon Tancott, you can just search me up there. Connect with me, message me on LinkedIn. You can obviously check out my website, webstreet.co.za. You can connect through predominantly. I think the best way to connect with me would be on LinkedIn. I spend most of my time connecting on LinkedIn, probably even more than email. But if you did want to email me, it's pretty easy. It's just brandon@tancott.com. So if you want to discuss anything around no code, web development, digital marketing, expert positioning, any of those type of things, or business within Africa, that you can hit me up on those contact details.